What's up guys, Sub-Zero here, back for my top comps of patch 12.17, the first patch of set 7.5. It's been a really interesting patch. It's honestly been, I don't know, partially balanced, partially unbalanced. There are definitely some comps that are stronger than others, but there are actually a decent number of comps that can be played. Over the past few days, a new comp has come out that I will get to later in the video that has really disrupted the meta. So I'm going to talk a lot about that one because I think it's absolutely insane. But there are still a decent number of comps that you can play and do well with. So with that being said, I'm going to get right into it. As always, we are going to go from 5th to 1st. So this is the 5th strongest comp in my opinion. And it is just a generic 6 Mirage Daeja comp. I think Daeja is still very strong. I think a lot of the Mirages are very strong. The only ones I wouldn't really want to play late game are Electric Overload and Pirate's Greed. I think with all of the other ones, you can make Daeja work really well. It's interesting, actually, because Pirate's Greed has been really hard buffed. I don't know if you guys have taken a look at the new loot table for Pirate's Greed. I can actually pull it up real quick, but it's actually quite insane what new Pirate's Greed does in terms of loot. Here, I'll pull this over here and look at the new Pirate's Greed loot table. This is on Mortdog's Twitter, if you want to look at it yourself, like outside of this video. But just getting 4 Mirage in, which you could do with, say, like +1 Mirage in the early game if you get an augment that gives you that, you can start hitting loaded dice, and 20% chance to hit a component is actually, like, insanity. 1 in 5 rounds, you're going to get a component from just 4 Mirage. And then you think 6 Mirage, so you high roll a Daeja really early, you can start getting duplicators, 25% for a component, 10% for a full item. Now, this doesn't mean that you should play 6 Mirage, 8 Mirage, and, 8 Mirage is, it's just bonus on top of that, a bunch of gold on top of the duplicator, a 25% chance full item, that kind of stuff. So this doesn't mean that I think that you should play, like, 8 Mirage, 6 Mirage the entire game. I still think the way that you play around this is you get in 6 Mirage, you play this for most of the game, and then ideally you have enough duplicators, enough item components, enough gold that you can pivot to like a Dragon's comp super late game. I think that's what you can do in most scenarios. However, if you really want to, you could play it the entire game. It's just you're not getting any combat stats out of Mirage. So yeah, I think you should still pivot to like a real comp late game, but I think this is quite a strong option that makes you want to even like play this comp more if you can hit Mirage early game with Pirate's Greed. That being said, all the other like actual combat Mirages outside of the Zappy one, outside of the Electric Overload, I think are quite strong. It does mean that you have to change your Daeja items up a bit. I will include a link to this in the description, but I actually created just a quick little like spreadsheet that shows you what itemizations that you should use for different Mirages, because it's not all the same. For example, if you get something like Spell Sword, the items that you want are pretty different. So here, this is what I have, and let's see, you guys can see most of it. It's slightly cut off because of my display capture. But, the idea is for something, this is, you can see, this is Spell Swords. For something like Spell Swords, you really want something like a Gwynsu's, things that, and I have a reasoning for all of it here. So, for the idea with Spell Sword is you already have AP, so you want items that give attack speed to scale your Spell Sword, and then stuff that scales off AP, like Giant Slayer or Crit. So I'll include this in the description as well. They'll have to actually update this because this is, out of date. But I'll include that as well so that you guys get a sense for the right items for Daeja. These are just some sort of generic items that are always good on Daeja, but there are different items that are optimal on different Mirages. Something like Dawnbringer, you don't really want lifesteal because you already have all that healing coming from Dawnbringer. Something like Executioners, you actually don't want to build crit. It's a little bit counterintuitive, but Executioners gives you crit, so it's actually a waste to build crit chance. It gives you that guaranteed crit, so crit chance is often wasted with Executioner's Mirage, those kind of things. You can see it all in the table here, which I'll include in the description, so you guys can check that out. But I think this is still just like a very solid comp that you can play with AP items if you get to late game. You still run the Cavalier frontline, though there are different options now, actually, with the opportunity to play multiple dragons. So if you aren't interested in playing the Cavalier frontline, say you hit perhaps like a 2-star Itis. I mean, this is the 6 Mirage sort of board that you want to build around. This is 5 slots right now. You can also play around Itis. If I can find them. Oh yeah, they're at the bottom here. So you can play Itis as another frontliner, and then you can easily, I mean, you already have Guardian, so like really you could fit in anything that you want. You could throw in like a random Sejuani. You can just throw in something like a Bard, just because Bard is an incredibly good unit late game. So you can do something like this. You can even think about potentially, you know, like if you don't have Yasuo yet, even if you don't have like Leona, if you have something like this, you can play something like Rakan, which is a very strong unit. There's actually, Mirage is like a much more flexible board now. So you know, you can play something like this at level 7, just get your 4 Mirage in, get your Guardian in, and get this Mystic off of Bard. It also depends what the Shimmer scale is, right? You know, attack speed Shimmer scale, Daeja really likes. The AD one is actually completely useless on Daeja now because Daeja doesn't do any magic damage, or doesn't do any physical damage with its auto attacks. But Daeja does do a really good job of stacking up Draven's Axe, so it's something that you can play for a while and then pivot out of. So Itis can actually be a good frontline, partially just because of the synergy with Leona, right? You already have Guardians here, so then it just makes a lot of sense as a frontline. So yeah, pretty straightforward. A few changes, and you know, also you can think about frontlines like Terra as well. Super late game if you don't play something like Itis. You know, you could do something like this with the Yasuo as well, and just play, you know, sort of like a capped out late game board, but you're playing, you know, Terra as your front line, including Nunu and Leona and this kind of stuff. You'd probably cut this for Yona in that case. But yeah, it's a bit more flexible, but I still think Mirage is quite strong on this patch. I also think it's pretty underplayed. I think there are not that many people playing Mirage, so it's actually very plausible that you can just sort of like play Mirage every single game. The only issue is just, you know, hitting the Daejas, that kind of stuff. That is my 5th best comp. Let's move on to the next one. My number 4 comp is Dragonmancer Lee Sin. This comp has been absolutely demolishing lobbies. If you can hit a 3-star Lee Sin, it's sometimes just unbeatable. I had a game I played recently where, you know, someone just hits 3-star Lee Sin, and I'm like, okay, I literally cannot beat this board. He is just going to one-shot all of my units with the kick. I was playing Scalescorn Reroll, so I had a 3-star Olaf, 3-star Diana, and Lee Sin was still one-shotting them with kicks. So very, very insane board. This is the most camped version of the board where you play 6 Tempests, because you do 60% of their health with the Lightning Strike, or 25% health with the Lightning Strike, and then 60% increased damage. Like, 60% increased damage is insanity, and then you can still just get in 4 Dragonmancer by playing some super random Dragonmancers. These can be anything, but, you know, Set and Volibear help you have some kind of a front line. But, you know, if you only have, like, Xayah, then, you know, just play Xayah frontline. If you only have a Karma, just play Karma. It's really just any other Dragonmancers. You always want to play the Yasuo, of course, but it's really like these two can be anything, really. And then 6 Tempest. Prior to hitting Aushin, you're going to play sort of like a more Dragonmancer heavy approach. So instead of Aushin, you know, you can play up to 6 Dragonmancers with just stuff like Karma and Xayah. So something, please go on the board like this is completely fine. And, you know, I mean, Graves is a very solid unit. You don't necessarily have to play Graves. If you want, you can cut this for, like I was talking about, just some of the generic units that are good, like Bard. I think he's a totally fine unit on his own. So, like, a board like this, I think, is completely fine if you were to cut Graves. I mean, you look at the synergies you complete. There's nothing that really jumps out as something that you would love to play, right? You know, you could play a Nyla just to get Assassin in, but it doesn't seem that enticing. But yeah, this is a very strong board. I had the Aushin items earlier, but I mean, it's really just AP damage items for Aushin, Shojin to help it cast faster, Archangels so that when you cast, you're one-shotting the board, and Gunblade just to sustain. There also is an idea with Aushin, actually, that I'd like to bring up, where, so Tempest procs 8 seconds into the fight, which means that most of the time when Aushin is casting, even if you give them a Shojin, it'll be after the Tempest proc. You know, Aushin would have to cast very quickly. I need Graves back in. Aushin would have to cast very quickly for that not to be the case. However, if you have something like Ascension, where you want Aoshin to be casting after 15 seconds, it can actually be optimal to do something like, say, Archangel's Gunblade and completely forego the Spear of Shojin, because you want Aoshin's cast to be delayed to 15 seconds. So that's something to think about if you ever take Ascension with this comp. Though it's kind of a sus augment in general, because Lee Sin's always going to be casting, before 15 seconds, but just something to keep in mind with Aoshin. And I mean, this is best in slot Lee Sin. He's going to get a ton of AP from Dragonmancer, especially, if you 2-star all the other Dragonmancer units, especially if you get 6 Dragonmancer in. So he gets a ton of AP. The Hodge helps heal him. And I mean, the IJG just does massive damage. So yeah, I would play this comp anytime you get offered, like IJG early and you have Lee Sin or just Dragonmancers. It basically is completely fine, like okay, like really, really mediocre until you hit Lee Sin 3. And then once you hit Lee Sin 3, the game is just done. They'll be rolling for Lee Sin 3 at level 7 usually. You can, if you have a lot of gold or a lot of HP, you can push level 8 so that when you're rolling for Lee Sin, you can also potentially hit an Aoshin. So it really depends on your position, but if you have like a low amount of gold or you're dying, then you'll start rolling for Lee Sin at level 7. But yeah, that is Lee Sin 3 Dragonmancer comp. All right, on to the number 3 comp, in my opinion. We have Scalescorn Warriors. This is a comp that I've had a lot of success with. I think it's very strong. I have the version here where Pantheon is a Scalescorn emblem. This is, like best in slot Scalescorn. If you don't have this emblem, then this is just your board. If you get the Scalescorn spat like I had there, then you can actually think about cutting some of the Scalescorn units, because Braum and Lilia really don't do that much in this comp. I often end up cutting Braum, and then when you cut Braum, now we're only 7 slots in. There are actually a few really, really good units to slot in here. The first is Zoe, because you have 2 mages in with this board. You're always playing Silas with Pantheon because you get Whisper in and you get Bruiser in here. You can fit Zoe in because now you have 3 mage, so Zoe's insanely good. And then also, often late game, you'll want an assassin to help Diana, so Nyla is really good. This is an incredibly strong board. If you get any Scalescorn augment, the new one that they added, Base Camp, where if you leave, it's kind of like Sniper's Nest if you all played set 6. It's like Sniper's Nest where you actually have to leave your Scalescorns in the same slot, like the same position on the board, and then they stack up extra damage. That augment is ridiculously strong. Also, if you just get an Olaf early, if you get dropped an Olaf during stage 2, I'm happy to play this comp, like very happy to play this comp. But I've even forced it from situations where I just get dropped a base camp and I say, okay, fuck it, I'm going to play Scalescorns. And that's a little bit first or 8th style. If you hit your Olafs and your Dianas, then you're chilling. If you miss them, then it's kind of bad, but oftentimes you can hit. Pantheon is an incredible addition in set 7.5 to this comp, just such a strong warrior, and it fits really well with the Silas for Whispers, and such an insane holder of Scalescorn spat, so really good. This allows you to get in 4 warriors with Yone and Yasuo, which are both totally fine units. I mean, Yone is just a trait bot, but Yasuo is a really strong warrior. If you get +1 warrior, you can always drop Yone. The only really awkward thing in this comp is that where would you put your warrior spat? There's not actually very good units to put it on. I mean, if you're playing Nyla late game, I guess you can put it on her. I've actually looked at the stats, and it says that the best person for you to put a warrior spat on is Silas, which actually tracks with my experience. You don't want to put it on Diana. She's just not going to deal enough physical damage. She doesn't auto-attack enough because she's, spending all this time casting. So oftentimes, you just slap the warrior emblem on Silas so that it can be on a unit and buff up all your other warriors. This is best in slot Olaf, or close to it. You can throw a ton of different items on him. Bloodthirster is still really good. Giant Slayer is completely fine on him. Yeah, those are 2. Rapid Fire Hand is another really good item on him, but it uses up 2 bows, so it's not easy to always craft. But if you can get a Rapid Fire Cannon, that item's amazing on Olaf. But this is a really good build, and this is basically best in slot Diana. She really likes Sunfire to deliver to the backline. She really likes Ionic Spark. Sadly, there's no more Frozen Heart, so you can't build that on Diana, but these items are completely fine. And then Pantheon also likes basically similar items to Olaf, like tanky, AD, frontline items. But yeah, one huge thing about this comp is getting the Zoe in late game. This unit is going to do so much for your comp. It's one of the very few comps where, because you're playing Lilia for Scalescorn, you can actually comfortably fit in Zoe. It's really weird what they've done with Mage this set, where there's not actually a lot of mages that you're that happy to play. You know, I do not want to play Atalia, Vladimir, Lux on my late game board, or Lilia if I'm not playing Scalescorn. So a lot of comps can't fit in 3 Mage. This is one of the few comps that can. So this is always very, very useful for the comp. And, you know, Nyla is the best assassin that you can play. But yeah, this is a very, very strong comp. I think I usually played from a spot where I've either naturaled Scalescorns early, ideally Olaf. Olaf is the one that you really, really want to hit early. If you don't have Olaf early, stacking up his passive stacks, where when he dies, he gets 5 AD permanently, it's kind of tough, you know? Also, one thing to remember, always, 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 when you're fighting Krugs, make sure Olaf dies. You can do that by just positioning him basically right here. Imagine the 2 big Krugs are like right up here. Position Olaf here. Actually, I think it might be here. I think the 2 Krugs are like here and here. But you basically position him in between the 2 Krugs. It's either this slot or this slot. Either one should be fine, honestly. I think it's one of these 2 slots. It's basically in between the 2 Krugs, but you put him here and then all your other units over here so that the 2 Krugs kill Olaf and farm a stack. Same thing with when you're fighting wolves. Just frontline everything else and put Olaf here so that they jump and kill Olaf. Really, really important to farm a few extra stacks on Olaf. But that's part of the reason why getting Olaf early is really important, so that you can start stacking up his AD. But yeah, if you're in a situation where you hit a Scalescorn augment or a Warrior augment, or you high roll an early Olaf, this is a very, very strong comp. All right, let's move into the number 2 comp. This is Xayah. This is the comp that everyone was complaining about on release. People were just saying, I'm only going to play Xayah. The whole lobby is just 4 Xayah comps. So it's interesting to see that's actually been dethroned by another comp. We'll talk about that in a sec. Xayah has done really, really well with the changes in set 7.5. First of all, Jace is an amazing guild unit. Just does so much CC. He can hold AP items. He can hold tank items. Such a good unit. And also just the buff that he gives to the entire team, AD and AP off the guild, is just so nice for your team. Just a really, really good tank frontliner, and in a set where they've actually taken a lot of CC out. I've heard people say the claim that Xayah is the only comp that actually gets to run CC. And I mean, if you're playing this version of the comp, it makes sense, right? You're running Jace, Shyvana, Hecarim, and Bard. So much CC. And Rakan as well. So much CC for free. Rakan is another big winner. This unit is so good. I mean, Guardian Mystic Ragewing, you get a free Mystic in that's a Ragewing, and it's just, I mean, he's such a good unit. You just put this unit on your board and he will do so much work. His ability provides so much utility. Oh yeah. This is the most capped out version of the board. There are other versions of this board that you can run, because Rakan is such a useful unit. If you end up with something like this, just this sort of basic setup here where Twitch is obviously going to provide you attack speed, Bard and Rakan are really nice together. You can even run something like an Idis frontline if you hit a 2-star Idis early, and if it's a good Shimmer Scale item. Once again, Draven's Axe is really good, attack speed is really good. If you can evolve Determined Investor in time and hit Diamond Hand, it's really good. The problem is now Determined Investor is 8 combat, so you really got to get Shimmer in early to be able to transform this or just be in a really good spot. Muggle's Mail is okay. Needlessly Big Gem is pretty good if you have enough frontline to proc it, and Goldmaster Staff is like garbage in this comp. So this is like the only one where I'd definitely not play it. If I potentially had like I was looking at the Idis angle, Goldmaster Staff really makes me not want to play it, and a late Determined Investor makes me really not want to play it. But you can do something like this, and this is only 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, right, units, including the dragon. So then you can start slotting in, you know, other just frontline units. You can, at level 8, you can have a Terra in, and then, you know, start positioning around the Terra hexes. You can also just put in, you know, 5 costs. You can put in Yasuo Soraka, totally fine. But this is just like another version of the comp. The most capped version is always going to be the Shyvana version because 6 Ragewing is so good, but this is something you can play and sort of transition into the Shyvana version. You can even, though I kind of hate it, you can play Zippy. So say you don't have Bard yet, and this is just the board that you have, you can, and it's not so bad, you can run Jace plus Zippy and get in a ton of guild units. So this is not the worst thing that I've ever seen, but it's not my favorite build either. But yeah, Xayah, this is best in slot Xayah. She doesn't actually need Quicksilver anymore. That's something like last set, people really wanted Quicksilver Xayah. You know, you would always look for Quicksilver for Xayah. There's not that much backline CC in this set. So Quicksilver is not that important. You're usually just going full damage items on her. Also, once you get to 6 Ragewing, Guinsoo's isn't as important for the attack speed. Prior to having 6 Ragewing, Guinsoo's is really nice. Once you have 6, you can even just do something like a Death Blade, Giant Slayer, Renon's Hurricane, that kind of stuff, because you're going to get so much attack speed from 6 Ragewing White, 175% attack speed. So not as important once you hit 6, but usually you'll end up building this because you can't guarantee that you hit 6 unless you're turbo rich. But yeah, this is a very, very strong comp. Can definitely just farm free top 1, top 2s if you can get to Shyvana late game. All right, so drumroll, please. This is an insane comp, right? Insanely comp. What could be even stronger than Xayah comp? What could be more consistent than that? If you've played TFT recently, if you have watched some streams, you have probably seen this comp. Cannoneer, Darkflights, and very, very crucially, it is Darkflights not running Swain. You do not run Tyrant Swain anymore, the carry for, or not carry, but the dragon for Darkflights in the main tank. You just run a bunch of Darkflights. You notice this board we're running 2 Rels and 2 Aphelioses. We want to get in 4 Cannoneers who are running Graves, Aphelios, Zeri, and Senna, and then we're just running Sejuani to give our team a little bit more tankiness. The item that you want to Darkflight in this comp is Zeke's Herald. As you can see, we will be giving Zeke's in this situation to 1, 2, 3, 4 different units. Giving multiple Zeke's to Graves, multiple to Aphelioses. It is multiple to Zeri. It's just actually gross. So gross. There are basically 2 really crucial items in this comp. It's Zeke's Herald and Last Whisper. If you're in the early game and you find a Zeke's Herald, you get item components for Zeke's Herald and you hit Darkflights, play this comp. Play this comp, okay? The most basic version of this comp is you can basically cut out a lot of these units and this is like the core of the comp. And then you just start adding more Aphelioses, and level 5 could be this, and level 6 could be, where's Rel? Level 6 could be this, and this could just be your board. It's just gross, honestly. You get so much value out of duplicating the Zeeks onto the Cannoneers. They do so much extra damage, and then late game Graves is just outputting infinite damage. If you get a Cannoneer Namzi, then you can definitely think, you definitely should try to play around that. Ideally, you get +1 Cannoneer so that this becomes a little less awkward, but it's totally fine to do something like this, and then you add in Zeri, and you need Graves because he is going to be your late game carry. And this is 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. So in this case, you often have to sort of end up cutting units. Ideally, you have +1 Cannoneer and you can cut Zeri so that you don't have to do quite this far, because you do really want to have Cavalier as your front line. So usually you do this if you have +1 Cannoneer or some other way of tanking up units, because you do want the Cavaliers. There's also late game, you don't have to play Sejuani. So imagine we have +1 Cannoneer, you could do something like this, and then you just add Hecarim. Because Hecarim's going to do really well with the Ragewing, and also going to give Cavalier for Rel. So you want to have basically a couple Cavaliers as your front line, and then just as many Cannoneers as you can fit. This comp comes from the rank 1 in Korea. He honestly has been doing insane things with this comp. His name is Strong Sexy. He's been playing on NA actually a little bit recently, but this is rank 1 Korea. This is his match history. It's just Darkflight game, Darkflight game, Darkflight game, Darkflight game, Darkflight game, Darkflight game. You look at his past 20, and he started playing it a little bit less, but 24 games on Aphelios. 22 games where he plays Graves. It's insanity, and look at his scores. This comp has started becoming more contested. So even you can see Strong Sexy, even the guy who is playing so much of this comp, he has started playing a few games of Xayah because it is getting really, really, really contested. So I wouldn't advise forcing this comp, because there are going to be some games where you just don't hit. But if you're early game and you hit Darkflights and you hit a Zeke's Herald, play this comp. And then just find a Last Whisper, you are golden. You can put items on Aphelios. He does very well with items. You want to put all of your really most important items on Graves, like Bloodthirster, and Titan's Resolve, and Edge of Night and that kind of stuff. Winsoo's is fine on him as well. So you want to put all your big carry items on Graves. If Namzi's a Cannoneer, you can play around Namzi. If not, you could literally play this comp, and then if instead of having Namzi, you just add Zeri. And then we have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 slots taken up. So what are we going to do with the last 2 slots? You already know it. Boom. Aphelios. Boom. Rel. This is an insane board. This is honestly an insane board. And then you push level 9 and you can add, a third Aphelios. You can even, if you get +1 Darkflight, throw in like a Rengar so that you can get the 4 Darkflight buff, because this is going to everyone. So if you get 4 Darkflight, it's 800 HP to all of your Darkflight units, which is insanity, honestly. So yeah, play this comp whenever you can get it. I wouldn't recommend hard forcing it because it is going to be contested in a lot of lobbies. And if you don't hit Zeke's Herald, you are not in a happy situation with this comp. But if you can hit Zeke's Herald and Darkflight and eventually Last Whisper, I would absolutely play this comp. So yeah, that's my comp list for the patch. I know we've gotten a bit long, so I think I'll just end it here. As far as starting items, I think because this comp is so broken, honestly, Giant Spelled Sword are both completely fine. They're also good items in their own right, so I would think about just starting those to give yourself the opportunity to play this comp. I think that's fine. As far as tempo, like how aggressive this patch is, I think it's actually not very aggressive. I think there's not that much rolling happening at level 6 and level 7. I think most people are actually grading to level 8 in a lot of games. The only problem is that this comp comes online really early, so you do have to be careful, because if you play a weak board, you can, get wrecked by this. The nice thing about this comp is they're always sacrificing one of their units, right? So even if you don't kill a single unit, they're guaranteeing that you kill a unit. So kind of funny that way, where you're actually not going to take 50 damage from this comp, because at worst, they're down a unit the entire time. But yeah, hope you guys enjoyed this video. Hope it helps with your climb. I'm actually going to be putting out a video on this comp specifically to go a little bit more in depth in some of the choices that you can make and just how to play it, basically, like early game, that kind of stuff. So be on the lookout for that. But yeah, hope you guys enjoyed this video, and I'll catch you guys next time. Bye.